The experience in 2020 was a real roller coaster of emotions. So if you go back to kind of February, March, April last year, I think that there was a feeling of impending doom across a lot of the private wealth sector. We felt that there was bound to be major economic repercussions, and that would kind of really impact our clients in potentially a catastrophic way. So we were all very worried. And then as the year progressed and we realised that actually...
Well, welcome back to the hot seat. Delighted today to be joined by Richard Joynt, who's the head of family office at Highvern in Jersey. Welcome, Richard.
Hi, David. Thanks very much for having me on the hot seat today. Nice to see you again.
Brilliant. Richard, you've recently taken up the new role at Highvern as head of family office. Before we get into our discussion, why don't you tell our audience a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Highvern is generally quite well known, but for the sake of anybody who doesn't know them, our firm was historically founded as Coutts Trustees in the late 60s. So it does have a very long heritage and a very long-standing client base and a good reputation in the marketplace. It was subject to a management buyout in 2016 when it became independently owned by the senior directors of Highvern. And since that time has kind of gone from strength to strength, really, and expanded into the funds arena 3 years ago. But as you would expect from a firm with the Coutts heritage, private client is very much at the centre of the ethos and of this kind of client service levels. And all of that was what attracted me to the firm, really, the independence, the strong focus on private wealth. And my mission is to come and expand more into the family office services area, which, as you know, I've been really kind of devoting the last kind of 17, 18 years of my career to, and which is a continually expanding and exciting place.
Okay, terrific. So we're living in unprecedented times. With COVID and the shock, that the challenge that's posed to the whole private wealth industry. You're experienced Jersey trustee. I mean, what's your perspective on how 2020 was for the trust and the private wealth sector in general? And what's your viewpoint for 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, really interesting question. I mean, the experience in 2020 was a real roller coaster of emotions. So if you go back to kind of February, March, April last year, I think that there was a feeling of impending doom across a lot of the private wealth sector. We felt that there was bound to be major economic repercussions. And that would kind of really impact our clients in potentially a catastrophic way. So we were all very worried. And then as the year progressed and we realized that actually, our clients are still busy, the structures and the family offices that we were looking after continued to grow and to want to transact. We actually had the really unusual experience of finishing the year on a really good set of results. And speaking to people across the industry, we weren't the only ones. It was actually a really kind of financially good year, which, considering how much bad news there was on the television every day, was quite remarkable, really. I would say the early part of 2021 remained that kind of buoyant. I do have the feeling, though, that people have, in the last 2 or 3 months, clients have been deferring planning for transactions to maybe September and beyond, and maybe early next year, as I think that there's this general feeling that we're coming out of a pandemic, disaster crisis, and that they'd like to see how the world settles before making some more major decisions. So I do feel in the last kind of quarter that maybe transactional related work has taken more of a back seat, and that has felt a little slower. But overall, I mean, we count ourselves very, very fortunate to have been so busy and successful.
Yeah, I guess we're coming into a new phase of the pandemic now, aren't we? As things do start to open up. But I mean, do you think that the private client industry, the private wealth advisory industry, relies so much on trusted relationships? It obviously historically has relied on face-to-face meetings in order to understand clients and what they're trying to do. Do you think that into the future we can continue without face-to-face, or what's the balance between the way technology, Zoom can fill a gap, but can it ever replace the face-to-face?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? And that the media's had a position and a view on all of this, because, of course, whenever the kind of the world lurches towards a technological change, often through need. The press are very quick to say, "Oh, is this the new way of doing everything?" And they've done the same in relation to office space and as well, and said, well, if people can work from home, surely that's the death of the office. So my own point of view is that it's been extremely useful to be able to have this medium at this time. It allows us to continue to have good relationships with clients, to see them, to kind of get a bit of body language, and to continue to communicate. But my own personal point of view is also that nothing will ever replace that one-on-one meeting where humans get a lot of information that's non-verbal from other humans, and therefore I think we'd be more easily able to tell what our clients are thinking and what's concerning them, and act as a group of advisors in a more effective a way, I think, if we can have those face-to-face meetings. I'm not saying that we'll revert back to the old ways and that we'll stop using this medium. It's extremely helpful, as today is showing, you and I having this chat via VC. But I do think that face-to-face is going to be important. I actually had the pleasure of onboarding a new client here in Jersey. They're resident here in Jersey, and they elected to meet face-to-face. And it was stunning to me over the course of 2 or 3 meetings just how much they told me about their family situation, their hopes for their children and grandchildren, what they hope that how we might help. And after 3 face-to-face meetings, I felt I've known them all my life. I'm not sure I would have felt that after 3 one-hour Zooms. I think there's very much still a place to face-to-face.
And I mean, do you observe any differences in the types of clients you're working with now? I mean, you mentioned you've got nearly 20 years experience in the industry. How have you seen the client base evolve?
That's another good point. I mean, I would say that generally the clients are younger and younger. We're not dealing really with kind of, people who are late in life and who are thinking about, planning for the next generations as they think of their own mortality. We're really seeing people who are in their kind of 30s and 40s, have made a lot of money in their own lifetime, and they're looking to kind of establish a family legacy and decide on an equilibrium between what they want their leisure and work time to look like, and how we can help them manage that. In addition, I think there's a lot more tech type clients, more kind of entrepreneurial people who've been involved in, generating new technologies which have taken off quite rapidly, and therefore they become rich very, very, very quickly. I also would say that we notice a lot more in terms of multi-jurisdictional. So I've been dealing with a potential new client in the last 2 weeks, and they have issues in relation to US reporting, Portuguese, German, and Indian, all in one couple. And once upon a time that would have been outlandish, whereas now not so unusual. And then I would also say that the kind of structures that we're looking after for these kind of clients are no longer just the traditional types that you might have expected to see, such as, trusts and companies for private clients and fund structures for fund clients, and collective investment schemes. I think that there's been a blurring of those 2 worlds. And now some of the fund type structures look really attractive to a family who want to co-invest together. So although technically it's private, actually the best practices in terms of systems, processes and reporting can actually come from the funds world. So I think to have those disciplines together in one house, and to actually have a great relationship between them and not see them as separate, I think is a real winner for clients who want to get the best of both worlds.
So these new, younger, more entrepreneurial clients, if they've made their own money, do they have a different view as to how they spend it and perhaps give it away, support charity, how they invest it? There's a lot of copy written about ESG and things like that. Is that a caricature, do you think, to sort of say that these kind of clients are more interested in that? Or what's your perspective on how they invest and potentially give away money that they've made?
Yeah, I think there has been a blurring of the lines. I think that once upon a time, people saw their business activities as, you know, the thing that they would spend the majority of their time on, and that then the philanthropy might be more along the lines of giving to things that they wanted to support. I think the two trends that I've seen in that regard are that ESG is now being properly baked into people's decisions on how to invest, and it's no longer a nice to have or something that's at the periphery. I think we're seeing clients who in their financial activities where they're trying to generate a profit, that is quite core to the conversation, which is really encouraging. And then on the philanthropy side, I would say that there's more of a trend towards actually applying the business disciplines that they have across the rest of their life to actually say, well, how can we actually apply that to further something that I think needs solving? And so, I've had a client who has, established a really large charity to address public health concerns in the third world. And basically recruited the entire staff base of that charity herself. It's a fully fledged operation with a lot of very good business disciplines baked in. And so I think that the rigor and engagement that people have previously applied to their financial investing, they're also now applying to their philanthropy. And so when I say the blurring of the lines, you can see that, all in one sentence, we're talking really about business discipline, giving money away, and, impact investing and ESG. All of these things are now so core to those kind of families that they're thinking about them all at once rather than separate areas of their life.
And advisors have a duty to be up the curve in terms of ESG and impact investing. There's a whole kind of range of investment knowledge and jargon that needs to be there in order to help advise the client, isn't it? It's not to, or I find there's a thirst for trustees at the moment to really enhance any knowledge that's available on the sectors of ESG and impact, because the space is moving so quickly. But I think the industry is ready to respond, isn't it?
It is, and I think you're right, it is moving very, very quickly. But I mean, within our company, within Highvern, we have an ESG committee. We have a champion whose job it is to engage with the community, that financial community in Jersey, and work communally to see, what can be done better in terms of ESG in financial services firms. We have these conversations with people across the wider industry as well, where they say, we should look at ways that we work and think about how that we can, show that we're putting our money where our mouth is. And I think that is quite a major theme, that the idea of greenwashing is now really quite abhorrent to clients. They want to know what you're actually doing, and they want to know what investments that have been selected are actually how they're being actually assessed on proper scales. So yeah, it's very much a live thing that's being asked of trustees.
Okay, interesting. And in addition to the client base evolving, the regulatory environment is obviously in constant flux. And since the start of this century, there's been a lot of change in the global landscape. You mentioned before clients being multi-jurisdictional and that adding layers of complexity. But how do you view, Jersey's position in the international picture, and how regulation plays a part in your daily role working with international families?
Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough to remember in the late 90s when regulation first came in for fiduciary services providers in Jersey. And at the time, there was quite a lot of people within the industry felt that it was unfair, and it created an unlevel playing field. That there were other jurisdictions who had no such requirement, and therefore they were going to be the beneficiaries of us, being too harsh, effectively. And some of their concerns, were completely valid in terms of the fact that it does add, quite a substantial extra layer of cost into a business. But actually, if you wind forward now to, 25, 24 years later, however long it's been, actually what it's given is clients a lot of comfort that things are being done correctly, that if they're not done correctly, then there will be penalties and fines and people will be called to account, that there is somebody to go to complain if something's not right. But more so that overall level of knowledge that you're dealing with a quality jurisdiction with quality people where things are done properly, and that you can rest assured that your family's wealth is somewhere that's safe and is being well guarded. So actually, I now look back and think, gosh, that was a good decision. I think that the world has moved on so much that in the era of transparency and accountability, and ESG, kind of all of these things to do with responsible investing and responsible structuring. I think that Jersey's now really well placed, and I kind of look back and think that was a really smart move.
Yeah, it's certainly one of the global centres of excellence, and that's the position we're going to, isn't it? Where across multiple time zones, you need to have centres of excellence with firms that are equivalents working with each other to coordinate. You mentioned your client with the prospect with the US connection. You need to deal with that with real skill and knowledge. Otherwise, with the amount of information flowing between jurisdictions, that will cause headaches and problems in the future. So I think Jersey, from that perspective, from my perspective, is very well placed on that global stage, isn't it, in terms of structuring?
It is, and I think that one of the things that Highvern prides itself on is the fact that we are not simply administrators. We do sit as a client's advisor as well as being a service provider. So, we have people of that level of qualification and skill that if we see a potential issue, or we can see a potentially better way of doing something, we really want to kind of try and add value at every stage of the process. We are the kind of trusted advisor and somebody who thinks about the governance, about the family situation, and looking for solutions, really. And that's what modern clients want. They don't want to have somebody who says, well, this is my little box and I'll do my administration bit in it, and I don't really care what happens outside. They want a team of people from different organizations acting, as a team around them.
And in that vein, we're going to be doing a webinar together in September, which I'm looking forward to working with you on, alongside a stellar lineup, where we're going to look at family office and governance and the challenges that family offices are facing now and in the next few years. I mean, perhaps you could give us a flavour of some of the challenges that you think family offices are facing now and how they're tackling them.
Yeah, absolutely. I am looking forward to that webinar. Should be good fun. I mean, I think that some of the challenges are around the kind of technical areas. So cybersecurity is something that is only getting more and more challenging all the time, and really requires high levels of investment into your IT security, which regulated financial services firms need to have and can afford. But I think if you look especially at smaller single family offices, can they afford that level of security which a bank or a major fiduciary has invested in? So I think that's going to be a continued big challenge. I think that you're also going to see a rise in other newer asset classes like the cryptocurrencies. I think that it's very tempting to see cryptocurrencies as a fad or maybe something that's peripheral. But if you look at how many billions of dollars worth of Bitcoins are currently being traded across a week, it's absolutely staggering. I mean, this is not a fringe industry any longer. And, family offices who are, have their traditional areas of expertise in maybe real estate or, in certain, investing in private companies, for instance, I think are going to ignore that asset class at their peril, because I think it's going to become really, it's going to start interacting with those industries in terms of enabling processes and efficiencies. So I think that's going to be another major one. I mentioned earlier the rise of the kind of more hybrid structure, where you're going to have kind of fund type structures with their reporting needs, as well as the private client type more trust element. I think that is going to be another trend, and I think that single family offices are going to have to find a way to address the fact that they may not have all of that talent internally. They may not have people who've been fund experts. They may have people who've been private client experts. So how do they partner with people to get the right solution? And then I think for me, maybe one of I've been saying it for a few years, but I think the last year has only really accelerated my thoughts, which is that I really think that the virtual family office is now on our doorstep. For some time I've been saying, is it really necessary for a family office to have all of its people employed in one place and sitting in one place? I think that actually you've now got the era of being able to communicate effectively virtually anywhere in the world. I think that any family could, with the right level of advisor and with the right level of effort, create a team around them that are their family office, but maybe they don't employ any of them. And maybe they're all, they have the agreement is that you have a slice of time of those people as and when you need to draw them in, and you draw a different mix of advisors depending on what the issue is. And again, that's going back to that solutions driven idea, where I think we really, we need to think about the fact that the client doesn't really want to think that there might be 5 or 6 firms on the phone. They want to think that they've got 5 or 6 people who are all working together to create a solution and a benefit to the client. And I think that's going to evolve more.
Well, that's really fascinating. Delightful to talk to you today, Richard. I look forward to seeing you on the webinar in the middle of September.
Fabulous. Great. Thanks very much for inviting me, David. See you soon.